Hello, and welcome to Uncle Milo Explains number 5, How to Make Plastic Tent Stakes. Now, the problem is that when you go camping, you need to keep your tent down by using tent stakes. Another problem is if you want to make your own tent, you've got to have tent stakes to hold it down with. Matter of fact, putting up a tarp, making a tarp into a tent is really easy to do only if you've got trees to tie it down to or if you have your own tent stakes. Okay, so what do you do about tent stakes? Well, you go to the store, you look for tent stakes like I did, and you'll find plastic tent stakes. They're expensive, they work, they're expensive, they're large. There's another even better one. These ones will hold down a real big tent in a windstorm. They work really well, again, very expensive. I found light tent stakes available. These are regular tent stakes that came off of some tents. The only type that I found that looked like this in the store were made out of titanium, and they were $18 for a half a dozen, like $3 each. I found some tent stakes that are just a big nail with a piece of plastic at the end, but those are expensive also. Now, I'm Mr. Cheap. I want to be able to make them cheaply. Okay, another reason why you need tent stakes, though, is even if you don't make your own tent, the problem is, well, these two tent stakes came after a camping outing. I went, walked around, and sure enough, we had about 20 tents that were put up during that camping outing, and somewhere, two different tents are missing a tent stake. If you go out and you're going camping, if you miss one tent stake, maybe you can go ahead and make another one out of wood if you're handy. But honestly, that's not really the worst problem. The worst problem is that tent stakes, when people pack up tents, they tend to get misplaced. I've had plenty of times where I've gone out camping, pulled my tent out, found the tent poles, and no tent stakes. Meanwhile, somebody else somewhere camping in another area pulls out a tent, and they find that they've got double the tent stakes that they need. What they do is they don't go around looking for the tent that's missing the stakes. They usually either pocket them or throw them back in or lose them or whatever. So the result is you end up with a tent. I've ended up with a tent with no tent stakes at all, and I've got to replace them. Okay, well, you can use the old method of making it out of wood, and I'll show you real quick how you do that. You find a branch. This is a piece of sycamore, and probably this will be good here, and I'll take it from here, and up to here. So. Well, that's not really a good solution. It takes a lot of time, then you lose it, or it's irregular. What I've done, one of the two methods that I've come up with, and I'll show you the one method this time, and the next time I'll show the other method. But one solution I've come up with is a plastic tent peg made out of, actually, believe it or not, plastic coat hangers. It takes a little bit of work to make these, not a lot, but the advantage of this is that they are really cheap. You can make all that you want for really, really little money, just a little bit of work. Okay? Now, actually making the stakes, you start with hangers, what they call tubular hangers. These are plastic, adult size. Each hanger will make 4 stakes. You take one of each color, show you how to cut them up. These hangers cost about a little over $1, $1.25, $1.50 for a package of 6 or 8. Diagonal cutters, dollar store item, cost me $1. You're going to cut 4. We have 4 lengths here to make stakes with. Here and here. Basically, you're going to cut it down the middle and cut it at the ends. You want straight pieces, it'll work fine. You start by cutting it directly in the middle. Cutting it here where you want to make sure it's right by the beginning of the web. And here, same thing. Up here you have to cut these off. And over here at the end, what I generally do is I cut it like this. I'm going to cut off that piece. And here. I'm not going to worry, it's going to be a bit of a waste. Well, I'll pick that up later. And actually cut this off along here, because I want to take that part off. This won't matter, I'm actually going to make it into the point. Same thing over here, I make it about as straight as possible. I want to make them relatively long. Okay, so now I throw away those pieces. I have 4 relatively long pieces that I can work with, too short, too long. And the same thing with this one here. I'm going to cut it here. Cut it corner. You need to have it cut. You have to have it cut on both sides. If you only cut on one side, it's going to go in crooked. So you cut on one side and cut on the other. This is enough of a point to go in. Just as long as it's got a diagonal, it'll push into the ground pretty well. Here I have 8 blanks ready to make into stakes. I'm going to need water for quenching and fire for heating. I'm going to heat it a short distance down. What's going to happen is you're going to heat this up, it's going to liquefy, and then it has to be quenched immediately before it gets any trouble. And the angle that it has to be done at is very important. You want it to be just a little bit more than a 90-degree angle. Heating it up, just keeping on turning it slightly. I don't want to put it beyond the tip of the flame so it doesn't get soot on it. It'll heat up quicker than you think, and so you've got to be careful that it doesn't burn. Starting to give a little bit. It has to heat directly to the center of the plastic. Almost ready to go. But once it goes, it has to be quenched quickly or it's going to give trouble. Keep on turning it. Now, if you stretch it too hard and it stretches on the back, that's not good. You want to kind of like make sure it's completely liquid, and then there we go. Heat it up very nicely, and then make it nice and firm. Now there's a hole because it's tubular. It's got a hole in it about a little bit more than halfway. Hold it in place. That's a little bit steep. So I'll make the other ones and I'll show you when I'm done how it's going to look. If this breaks off, this is a very long one, you can actually take it, if it breaks off right here, you can then bend it again. I'll show that to you. Get a nice long one here. See this one? If it breaks off out somewhere, it won't break that easily once it's completely cooled. But you say, okay, well, it broke. Well, you can always take a match. It usually takes about 1 match, maybe 2, to completely melt it enough. And you heat it up again. And you make it a little bit shorter. Almost ready. And of course, if you don't have any water with you, you do have to hold it for a while. I use the water because, quite honestly, if I'm going to make a lot of them, it takes a long time to heat. But there, okay, that's ready to go. And I have to hold it in place, and there we go. Cool. That's about the angle that I like. Not too much, not too little. That's just about right. Okay, I'm done with them. This one's a little bit long, this one's a little bit short, but in general, on the top I'm talking about there, but in general, they'll be okay. Comparing them to these regular steaks, as you can see, they're about comparable, a little bit shorter, but that's okay. They'll work pretty well. So compared to the steaks that you normally have. Next, I'll show you how I put them into the ground and see how that works. Okay, what we're going to do is just put the steaks in. You can use steel hammer. That's kind of hard, tend to break things. You can use a rubber hammer, or even, be right back, your handy dandy rock, whatever you can use to put your steaks in. Put your steak out. Put your steak in over here. Go ahead, tap it down. Okay, if it's well made, it'll work great. If it's not too well made, it tends to break. That's the only defect of these here steaks. You know, leave it in the ground, or if you pull it out, you can always make another one. Or anyway, so don't put it in too hard, or if it breaks, well, that's okay. However, I've had the problem that sometimes it goes into the ground, it hits a rock, or even worse, one place I went used to be a bluestone quarry, and it was just full of stuff. You either use one of these to pre-drill the hole, or I went to Home Depot. I got a bunch of these nails, pre-drilled the hole. It is a good idea to have a nail or a metal stake if you have these plastic stakes, because otherwise you may end up in a situation where you have a rock and you have to put them in. But they work very well, very inexpensive. Okay, that's how to make plastic tent stakes. Make them out of a hanger. But you have some of these plastic hangers hanging around in your closet right now. What I do is just cut them up, make some extra tent stakes out of them, as you need them, go out and buy them, really cheap. And of course, you just pound it in with whatever. Don't forget, take a metal tent stake or a nice big nail, 17-cent nail from Home Depot, because you never know when you're going to need it. Usually just somewhere in your camping equipment to have something to drill a hole, because if you use plastic tent stakes, usually, Murphy's Law being what it is, you'll end up in some place where you can't go in without hitting a rock. You got to be able to drill a hole. So, anyways, thank you very much for tuning in, and this is Uncle Milo saying thank you very much for watching Uncle Milo Explains number 5, How to Make Plastic Tent Stakes.